James smirked as he packed his bags, stuffing neatly folded shirts into his suitcase with the casual arrogance of a man who believed he was upgrading his life. "You'll be fine, Em. It just wasn't working out." He didn't even have the decency to look guilty. No hesitation, no second thoughts. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. I could have screamed. I could have begged. But that wasn't me. I wasn't the woman who fell apart over betrayal. I was the one who made sure karma ran on schedule. "Of course," I said smoothly, "no hard feelings." He hesitated then, as if my lack of emotion threw him off. He had expected anger, maybe some tears. But I gave him nothing, just a small, unreadable smile. I let him believe I was heartbroken but composed, the kind of woman who would cry into a glass of wine with her best friends and eventually move on. James left, and 2 weeks later I saw the proof of what I had already known. Madison Reed. She wasn't just a random rebound. She had been in the picture before he left me, only I hadn't realized it. My Instagram feed filled with their smiling pictures, their hands intertwined, their new romance flaunted as if it had sprung out of thin air. But I knew better. She had been there while we were still together, whispering promises in his ear, making him feel like he was trading up. I could almost hear her voice in my head, sweet and deceiving. "She's holding you back, James. You deserve more. Someone who really gets you." I scrolled through the comments, ignoring the pitying messages from mutual friends and the subtle gloating from James's side of the circle. Instead, I focused on something much more interesting. Madison had an ex, Liam Turner. He was nowhere in her new fairy tale, erased from her online existence as if he had never mattered. That alone told me everything I needed to know. James wasn't her final destination. He was just the next stepping stone. So I reached out. It started with a simple message. "Emma Lawson, hey Liam, I think we have a mutual problem." His response came faster than I expected. "Liam Turner, that depends. Is her name Madison?" Bingo. We met at a quiet bar 2 nights later. He was even better looking in person. Sharp blue eyes, strong jawline, the kind of guy who seemed too level-headed to be played. And yet, here we were. "So, tell me," he said, leaning back in his chair with a half smirk. "How bad did she screw you over?" I stirred my drink, watching the way his fingers tapped against his glass. "Not as bad as she did to you, I'm guessing." His smirk faded. "She cheated for months before she finally left, and guess who was waiting for her on the other side?" I tilted my head. "James Carter." Liam let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "Figures. So what now? You looking for closure?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "Oh, Liam. I'm looking for much more than closure." He studied me for a moment, his expression shifting. Then his grin returned, this time sharper. "I think I'm gonna like you, Emma." And just like that, the plan was in motion. James thought he had won. Madison thought she was untouchable. But they were about to learn the hard way. Karma was patient, and so was I. Liam leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied me. The dim bar lighting cast shadows across his sharp features, making him look even more intense. I could tell he was still deciding whether I was serious or just another scorned ex looking for someone to vent to. "So what exactly are you thinking, Emma?" he finally asked, running a finger along the rim of his glass. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch between us just long enough to make him curious. Then I set my glass down and met his gaze. "I don't believe in direct revenge. I prefer letting people destroy themselves. And Madison? She's already halfway there." A smirk tugged at the corner of Liam's lips. "And James?" I shrugged. "He thinks he upgraded. He's about to find out he didn't." Liam exhaled, rubbing a hand across his jaw. "You know, I spent months trying to figure out what went wrong with Madison. Thought maybe I was the problem. Turns out, she was just looking for her next opportunity the whole time." He laughed under his breath. "Guess James is playing my old role now." "Exactly." I leaned in, my voice lowering slightly. "And what do you think happens when James realizes that Madison is cheating on him the same way she cheated on you?" Liam's eyes darkened. "He loses it. And when he realizes that she was never really his to begin with," I tilted my head slightly, "that he was just a convenient rebound, a step up in her mind?" Liam let out a quiet chuckle, shaking his head. "Ha ha. You're good." I smiled. "I know." We spent the next hour going over what we knew about Madison. Liam still had screenshots of her old messages, texts she had sent to other guys while she was still in a relationship with him. Some were harmless flirting, but others were blatant proof that she had been juggling multiple men at once. She always thought she was smart about it, Liam said, scrolling through his phone and flipping the screen toward me. Used to tell me I was paranoid if I ever asked why she kept her phone face down or left the room to take calls. I scanned the messages, recognizing the patterns immediately. Madison didn't just cheat, she curated her relationships, making each guy feel like they were the only one who truly understood her. It was a game to her. And what about James? I asked. How do you think he's handling things now? Liam laughed, but there was no humor in it. He probably thinks he won the lottery. Madison knows exactly how to make a man feel like he's the center of her universe, until she finds someone else. I tapped my fingers against my glass thoughtfully. We need to accelerate that process. Liam nodded. You want him to see her for who she really is. More than that, I corrected. I want him to experience what it feels like to be blindsided, to realize too late that he wasn't as special as he thought. Liam smirked, his eyes glinting with something I could only describe as satisfaction. I like the way you think, Emma. We spent the next week gathering everything we needed. Liam had old texts and photos that proved Madison had been cheating long before she ever left him. But more importantly, we started watching her now. Madison was careless, just like James had been. She posted pictures of expensive dinners, tagging restaurants James couldn't afford on his salary alone. She went to girls' nights that looked suspiciously like intimate dates. And most importantly, she still wasn't subtle with her texts. James is going to hate this, Liam murmured, looking over a screenshot he had just taken. Madison had messaged someone saved as Travis, Jim. But the messages were anything but about workouts. Madison, can't wait to see you again. Travis, Jim, same place Friday night? Madison, of course, James is so clueless, lol. I leaned over Liam's shoulder, scanning the messages with an approving nod. She really doesn't change, does she? Liam scoffed. Nope, and she clearly thinks James is as blind as I was. That's what makes this fun. I took a deep breath, already imagining the moment James would finally see the truth. We don't even have to manipulate the situation. We just have to show him what's already there. Liam's smirk grew wider. So, how do you want to do this? I tapped my chin, considering the best approach. We make it impossible for him to ignore. We'll drop hints first, let his paranoia build. Then we give him undeniable proof, right when he thinks he's on top of the world. Liam nodded slowly, the gears turning in his mind. I can message James directly. Act like I'm just catching up, maybe drop something subtle about Madison's habits. And when he brushes it off? I asked. Liam grinned. We up the ante. I exhaled, already savoring the inevitable moment when James's perfect illusion would crumble. He thought he had won, thought he had outgrown me. But soon, he'd realize the truth. I didn't need to chase revenge. I just needed to let the pieces fall exactly where they were meant to, and I would be watching when it happened. James had no idea what was coming. That was the best part. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to enjoy the quiet anticipation, the steady unraveling of the illusion he had built for himself. Madison played the perfect girlfriend in public, but Liam and I knew better. She was predictable, reckless even. She thrived on the high of deception, believing she was too smart to get caught. We just had to let her own actions do the work. Liam and I planned our next move carefully. There was no need for some grand confrontation, no need to shove the truth down James's throat. The trick was to plant just enough doubt in his mind, to let his paranoia simmer until it boiled over, and for that we needed to make sure he saw the cracks before the whole thing shattered. The first step was casual. Liam sent James a simple message, nothing aggressive or confrontational, just friendly enough to be disarming. Liam, hey man, been a while, no hard feelings, hope things are good with you. James responded within minutes. James, didn't expect to hear from you. Things are great, actually. Life's never been better. I read over Liam's shoulder as he smirked at his phone. He really believes that? He muttered. He needs to, I said. If he admits things aren't perfect, he has to question his choices. He's not ready for that yet. Liam sent another message, this time planting the seed. Liam, glad to hear it. Funny thing, I saw Madison the other day. Brought back memories, you know? She ever tell you about that time she went on a girls' trip and it turned out to be something else? James took longer to respond this time. James, what are you getting at? Liam typed slowly, deliberately. Liam, nothing, man, just saying she's good at keeping secrets. And that was it. That was all we needed. We didn't push, we didn't explain, we just left it there, hanging in the air like an unanswered question. The next move was Madison's. though she didn't even know she was playing. A few nights later, Liam sent me a screenshot. It was from James' social media. His latest story showed Madison at dinner with him, her hand draped over his as she laughed at something he had said. The caption read, "The best things in life fall into place when you least expect them." I almost laughed. Poor James. He was trying so hard to convince himself that everything was fine. But what really caught my eye was the reflection in the restaurant's glass window. Behind Madison, just barely visible, was the blurred outline of a man. Not James. I zoomed in, studying the faint details. Broad shoulders, a confident posture. A man sitting just close enough to Madison that it seemed intimate. James hadn't noticed. Yet, Liam sent another message that night, just as James was still riding the high of his perfect evening. Liam, crazy coincidence. I was at that restaurant tonight. Small world, huh? And with that, the cracks began to deepen. James was the kind of man who never questioned his own luck. He walked through life believing he was untouchable, that every decision he made would land him on his feet. But doubt, once planted, had a way of spreading like poison, and I could already see the first signs of its effect. After Liam's last message, James didn't reply right away. Hours passed, then an entire day. He was thinking about it, replaying the details in his mind. I imagined him scrolling through Madison's social media, staring at that restaurant photo, trying to convince himself that nothing was off. But something was off. I could feel the shift before I saw it. Madison, who had been posting nonstop about their perfect relationship, suddenly went quiet. No more tagged locations, no more gushing captions. It was subtle but noticeable. Then Liam sent me another screenshot. It was a text from James. "James, what exactly did you see at the restaurant?" I smiled when I read it. He had tried to hold out, to dismiss the comment as a coincidence, but curiosity had won. Liam played it cool. "Liam, not much. Just saw Madison from across the room. She looked like she was having an interesting conversation." James's reply came quicker this time. "James, with who?" Liam let the message sit. 5 minutes. 10. Then he responded. "Liam, honestly, I didn't recognize the guy. Thought you would know. It was a perfect trap." James would never admit outright that he was suspicious. That would mean acknowledging that Madison wasn't as perfect as he wanted to believe. Instead, he would start paying attention, watching her closely, searching for signs that weren't there before. And Madison? She was already making it worse without realizing it. That night she went out again, this time without James. Her social media stayed quiet, but Liam and I had our ways of keeping track. A mutual friend, someone neither Madison nor James would suspect, happened to be at the same bar. The texts came in quickly. "Friend, Madison just walked in with some guy. Definitely not James." I could already picture it. Madison, draped in effortless charm, her laughter just a little too intimate, her hand brushing against someone else's arm as she ordered a drink. She thought she was being careful, but people noticed things. More importantly, James would notice things. The next morning, the cracks were visible. He hadn't liked any of Madison's recent posts. He hadn't commented on her stories. Small things, but for a man who had been parading her around like a trophy, they spoke volumes. Then Liam got another message. "James, be honest, was Madison like this when she was with you?" I leaned over Liam's shoulder, reading the words slowly. "He's almost there," I murmured. Liam smirked, already typing his response. "Liam, you tell me, James. You're the one dating her now." James was unraveling. The once cocky, self-assured man who had left me behind without a second thought was finally seeing the truth for what it was. And the best part? He had walked straight into it on his own. After Liam's last message, there was silence. No immediate reply, no snarky comeback. James was digesting it. He wanted to dismiss it, to convince himself that Madison was different, that she wasn't playing him the way he had played me. But doubt had a way of clawing into your mind and refusing to let go. 2 days later, Liam sent me another screenshot. This time, it wasn't from James. It was from Madison's own social media. It was a photo of her, seated at an upscale rooftop bar, a half-finished cocktail in front of her. The caption was vague but telling. "Some nights are full of surprises." There was no tag, no mention of James, but what caught my eye was the reflection in the glass behind her. Blurred, but undeniable. A man's silhouette, leaning in just a little too close. "She's not even trying to be careful," Liam muttered as he showed me the image. I smirked. "She doesn't think she has to be." That's when James cracked. At around midnight, Liam's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text, it was a call. He raised an eyebrow, glancing at me. "Do I answer?" I nodded. Let's hear what he has to say. Liam put the call on speaker, and James's voice came through, tight with frustration. Liam, I need you to be straight with me. Liam kept his tone casual. About what? There was a sharp exhale on the other end. Madison, you were right. I think she's messing around. Liam and I exchanged a look, but he played it cool. Why do you say that? She's been acting weird. She's always on her phone, keeps turning its screen down. And the other night she told me she was going to dinner with friends, but when I asked which ones, she got all defensive. There was a pause, then James muttered almost to himself, "This is what she did to you, wasn't it?" Liam leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Yup. Silence stretched on the line, thick and heavy. Then James's voice returned, lower, almost bitter. I feel like a fucking idiot. I smiled to myself, letting the moment settle before leaning toward Liam. Send him the screenshots. Liam hesitated but then nodded, scrolling through his phone and attaching the images. The messages from Madison to other men, the flirty texts, the undeniable proof that James had never been special. He hit send. A minute later, James cursed under his breath. She's been doing this the whole time, hasn't she? Liam sighed. Looks that way. Another pause. Then in a quieter voice, James asked, Did Emma know? I looked at Liam and smirked, taking his phone from his hands. I typed out the response myself. Liam, she knew before you did. There was no reply, just silence. But we both knew James had finally learned his lesson.